Hi, my name is Kristen Estes, and this is my video presentation for the book Seeds of Deception by Jeffrey Smith. A little bit about myself. I live in Tipton, Missouri with my husband and our 4 children. I decided to go back to school later in life and am now a double major at State Fair in industrial electrical maintenance as well as engineering. And I'm now a full-time technician mechanic for an ice machine company based out of Sedalia. So the book that I selected was a book about GMOs, and really it's a case against GMOs that the author Jeffrey Smith presents to try and not only warn people as to the dangers of GMOs, but also really try and get them to be completely against it. And that was what attracted me to it, because I like those type of expose books. I'm attracted to things like Erin Brockovich stories, as well as the old books that Kevin Trudeau used to put out, and the truth about cancer and all of those things, because I very much am of the belief that greed of money and power and by corporations and collusion with the government is definitely something that exists, and we just sometimes turn a blind eye to it and don't always recognize it as being there, but it is. And I also didn't know much about GMOs other than what the acronym stood for, and being gut healthy conscious, I wanted to understand it more, and so that's what attracted me to it. So in the book, as far as the synopsis, each chapter the author just presents stories of things that have happened in the history of GMOs. He presents testimonies as well as kind of public controversies. He puts out there things that have happened, trials, people that have been in the spotlight in the world of GMOs, famous scientists and organizations, especially corporations that are big biotech corporations and things like that, and how all of these things have led to a lot of cover-up and a lot of adverse side effects. The data and research he presents in there as well. And so that's the synopsis. The author he is an active consumer activist, and he has a little bit of experience in the GM market, and I think that from what I read kind of opened his eyes to a lot of things, and which is now why he's an activist against GMOs. My favorite parts of the book really were just everything that involved learning about the corporation Monsanto, which is by all accounts the biggest biotech company in the world, not just in America, in the world, and of all things, they're based out of Missouri. Of course, they're no longer called Monsanto. They were acquired by Bayer recently. And what's interesting, and I love this sort of thing, is both of those corporations are in the, in the chemical industry, biotech industry, and they have lots of skeletons in their closet, lots of things in their past. And just look up Bayer and World War II. They're a German-based company, and they did a lot of horrible, nasty things and were responsible for atrocities. Monsanto, they are actually responsible for horrible things that happen by putting out and proclaiming the safety of things like DDT, Agent Orange, PCBs, and Roundup, and RBGH. And so there's a lot of things in their history that really speak to the fact that they have a lot of experience of at least being wrong about the safety of products that they're putting out. At the worst, lying and covering it up. And there have actually been in their past lots of criminal allegations regarding cover-up and falsified documentation and things like that. Their worldwide goal, which was something I found to be extremely interesting, they put a statement out there saying that their goal was to have 100% of commercial seeds GM and patented. And that's just a scary thing for somebody to take something that should be free and available to all by nature and have it fully patented and genetically modified and engineered, that's scary. So the big picture, looking at really what are the side effects that consuming GM products can have on our health as humans, especially our children, because one of the things that it talks about in the book is the fact that children are more at risk than even adults because of the way that children are still growing, and lots of things in their body are still forming. And so the way that it can interrupt all of those processes that happen as a child is growing is scary. And there's severity of adverse effects that really does make it hard to pinpoint exactly what is being caused by things like GM products, especially because we know in our society today, there's lots of things out there that are not natural that can influence our health. Also, the impact that it has on the market, what it means for farmers, because if farmers are being faced with not having much of a choice because the market is so competitive for these products that supposedly turn out much more sellable and marketable because they're pest resistant and also resistant to disease and things like that, then they can get left behind in a market that's being flooded with GM crops, and really struggle to make ends meet if they're trying to stick with something that's non-GMO. And also it makes it hard in the market for us as consumers to be able to make informed decisions, because I'm not for forcing companies to have to label things. I very much believe that kind of hinders a free market. And I want the government having less regulation over small businesses especially, and that's a lot of money to have to force businesses to put out. However, we need to be able to have the knowledge to know what it is that we're buying, and if we're buying something that's genetically modified or not. And so knowing what crops are the biggest genetically modified crops, and knowing specifically what produce and dairy and meat and things like that, processed foods and supplements, what has been impacted by genetically modified organisms, so that way we can make informed decisions, is huge. And also the impact on the ecosystem, the food chain. It's going to start with the feed, and then the animals that consume that feed, and then we consume the animals. That's something to consider. And also the non-GMOs being affected by things that I learned about in the book that I had not even considered, such as pollination and gene transfer horizontally, because as these crops are growing, that pollen, not only can that pollen spread to other plants and other organisms, but also whether it be meat, animals or crops, the waste that dies and decomposes, as we know, and goes into the soil and then is consumed by more plants. That's something that we really have to consider. Things that I learned, I learned a lot about the science behind GMOs. I learned about the discrepancy in the science presented that's, as far as why so many people are saying, no, it's good versus why it's bad. And a lot of it just has to do with bias and money and greed. And it really is a scary thing. The fact that it's difficult for us as people who are not scientists to be able to find information and know who we can trust, because anybody can be swayed. The government is certainly, even though they're supposed to protect citizens, certainly not who I'm going to be trusting. I'm not going to be trusting corporations who are mainly after money and growing their business. Scientists, you can have scientists that are for nonprofit organizations or universities or things like that, who are trying to really just be honest and do the right thing and present accurate data, versus scientists that are owned by corporations or regulatory committees that are swayed one way or the other, strong-armed to not present the information that they have. And there's whistleblowers too that I'm very thankful for. So all in all, I love this book. I really was surprised at how much information I got out of it, because I learned a lot about GMOs and the way that the splicing of the DNA, and how you can take the DNA from one species and implant it in the other. I know we've learned a lot in class about that, but I didn't realize just how much it was affecting the products that I consume, the products that I have access to. And so I thought it was a great book to learn about that and have a different perspective. And so thank you, and I hope you guys have a great weekend.